Hi, everyone.
Hello again. We're in chapter 15 of the Proclaimer's book, Development of the Organization Structure. We made the point in the last couple of videos that they're doing serious damage control here because the early flip-flops have been exposed by David Reed and James Penton and Ray Franz in the previous decade or so before the Proclaimer's book comes out. Now they have to make some kind of, well, they have to spin it, don't they? They have to spin the flip-flops to make it seem like we were always trying to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
So when they deal with the elders flip-flop in the 1890s here, that is that they didn't have elders at first for 16 years or so. Then they decided to have elders because of things that were disturbing them in the local congregation. Well, what were the disturbances about? We made the point that they were basically about the authority of Charles Russell, who was now being thought of as the faithful and wise servant. So now, how were they chosen? Now they bear down here upon the democratic aspect of it. It wasn't theocratic, and that's why we had to change it again, right, later. So let's read the paragraphs, and here they bring Christendom into the story only to dump on the so-called clergy class, but using the clergy class and the scholars of Christendom to justify themselves' interest. So let's read it.
Okay. Page 206, the bottom. In accord with the way they understood matters then, however, the selection of elders and of deacons to assist them was made by congregation vote. Each year, or more often if necessary, the qualifications of those who might serve were considered, and a vote was taken. It was basically a democratic procedure, but one that was hedged about with limitations designed to act as a safeguard. All in the congregation were urged to review carefully the biblical qualifications and to express by vote not their own opinion, but what they believed to be the will of the Lord. Since only those fully consecrated were eligible to vote, their collective vote, when guided by the Word and the Spirit of the Lord, was viewed as expressing the Lord's will in the matter. Although Brother Russell may not have been completely aware of it, his recommendation of this arrangement was perhaps influenced to some extent not only by his determination to avoid any semblance of an exalted clergy class, but also by his own background as a teenager in the Congregational Church. When the Millennial Dawn volume entitled The New Creation, published in 1904, again discussed in detail the role of elders and the manner in which they were to be selected, special attention was directed to Acts 14, verse 23. Concordances compiled by James Strong and Robert Young were cited as authorities for the view that the statement, "they had ordained them elders," in the King James Version, should be translated, "they had elected them elders by a show of hands." And then they have a footnote. I'll read to the end of the paragraph, though. It says, some Bible translations even say that elders were appointed by vote. And then they have in brackets Young's literal translation of the Holy Bible and Rotherham's Emphasized Bible, end of bracket. But who was to do that voting? The footnote has a reference to a Greek and English lexicon to the New Testament by John Parkhurst, 1845. The quote says, "The literal meaning of the word used in the Greek Bible text," and then they give you the Greek, "is to extend, stretch out, or lift up the hand. And by extension, it could also mean to elect or choose to an office by lifting up of hands."
Adopting the view that the voting was to be done by the congregation as a whole did not always yield the results that were hoped for. Those voting were to be persons who were, quote, fully consecrated, unquote, and some who were elected truly met the scriptural qualifications and humbly served their brothers. But the voting often reflected personal preference rather than the word and spirit of God. Thus, in Halle, Germany, when certain ones who thought they should be elders did not get the positions they wanted, they caused severe dissension. In Barmen, Germany, among those who were candidates in 1927 were men who opposed the work of the society, and there was considerable shouting during the showing of hands at election time. So it was necessary to switch over to a secret ballot. Now I'm wondering why suddenly we jumped 30 years into the future here. We'll have more to say about the why here in a couple of minutes. They go on. Back in 1916, years before these incidents, Brother Russell, with deep concern, had written, quote, "A horrible state of affairs prevails in some classes when an election is to be held. The servants of the church attempt to be rulers, dictators, sometimes even holding the chairmanship of the meeting with the apparent object of seeing that they and their special friends shall be elected as elders and deacons. Some quietly try to take advantage of the class by having the election at some time which is especially favorable to them and their friends. Others seek to pack the meeting with their friends, bringing in comparative strangers who have no thought of being regular in attendance at the class, but come merely as an act of friendship to vote for one of their friends." End of the quote. Brother Russell. Now this is 1916, so let's keep in mind this is just before Russell dies. And then they conclude this section by saying, did they simply need to learn how to handle elections along democratic lines more smoothly, or was there something from God's word that they had not yet discerned? Now we know where this is leading. It's leading to the abandonment of the democratic principle entirely.
Yeah.
But now they're trying to explain it as being, well, they did some research and they found out that it had something to do with a vote. But look at the sources for the research here. Well, legitimate, James Strong and Robert Young, these are concordances that were then famous and still are.
Yeah.
But then you talk about Rotherham's translation. It's always been a fringe Bible. And Young's literal translation of the Holy Bible. These are translations that are not much used anymore for the very good reason that everything in the scholarship of that time was blissfully unaware of the phenomena of Koine Greek. Koine Greek had not yet been established. That would happen at the very same time as Russell's writing his last volume of the studies, 1904, The New Creation. Adolf Deisman is making Koine Greek well known, and that changes New Testament scholarship entirely. So no modern Bible that I'm aware of represents this thought that it was by a showing of raising of hands that that the vote was taken to elect the elders.
Yeah.
The ESV says in that verse, by the way,
That's Acts 14:23.
14:23, yeah. When they had appointed elders for them in every church. Who appointed the elders? Well, in this text, it's Paul and Barnabas that are doing this touring and the preaching, and they are the ones appointing elders in the churches that they found, right? We've done some research in this, and here's a handy tool that I first learned about through one of our elders, by the way, who used to use it on the platform back in the 1970s, 8 Translation New Testament. And we checked all 8, and none of them support this rendering.
Yeah.
So really this is a smoke and mirrors issue. Like
Yeah.
we used to think because we were checking only those sources that this was the way it was done.
They all come to the conclusion that it's Paul and Barnabas that are doing the appointing, and some of them even translate it that way.
That's right.
But you also have read a lot of commentaries, Acts commentaries, from different periods of time, and some of them would have been early ones. Did you ever find them giving the understanding that it was a vote
Democratic
by hands?
vote? No. I've never seen it in Acts commentaries, but they show no evidence here that they're ever consulting Acts commentaries. It's concordances they're looking at. And Parkhurst as a source in the footnote, like you said, 1845. No, these are not things that we could recommend today as adequate or representative sources.
Language understanding and
So this all exposes not only the double thing, like we're talking about avoiding a proud clergy class, and then you're referencing clergymen all over the place here, Christendom scholars.
Just the way that first paragraph phrased it was that Russell was determined to avoid any semblance of an exalted clergy class.
So what did he create?
Instead, he has an exalted individual, him. He's the one that's going to be head of everything, and he's the FDS. And is that better?
By
having a dictator at the top?
Even
if he was a good dictator, he would still be a dictator.
He'd still be a dictator. That's right. And all the way through here, think of the dates. You've referenced 1895 as when the elder issue got changed, right?
Yeah.
Then you go to 1927 for an example of what could go wrong in the democratic process. And you're in Germany, by the way, in 1927. Then you're back to 1916, just before Russell died, and he's complaining about what's happening in some of the local congregations.
Yeah.
But we know that by then he's now the official faithful and wise servant. And that a year later in the finished mystery, they're insisting that everybody recognize him as the faithful and wise servant. And yet, in the middle paragraph, you're jumping to 1927, the very year when Rutherford gets rid of Russell as the faithful servant, is imposing his dictatorship upon Germany and of course America. As William Schnell points out, Germany was kind of used as a testing ground for, is this approach going to work? Is JFR, Rutherford, going to be able to take over all the congregations that think of themselves as connected to and faithful to Charles Taze Russell? And Schnell points out that it did work, but only by brutalizing the elder arrangement that was already there.
Yeah. So if they'd looked at biblical examples, they would know that the democracy is not in there. It's not in the Old Testament, it's not in the New Testament. It's just not biblical.
Although, it needs to be said that before the theocracy gets started, by Moses and by Aaron, really, who becomes the high priest, before that happens, what do they have in the way of governance? Or they have representative older men, patriarchs.
Basically the heads of families.
Yeah.
And then they serve their whole family as a representative, and they serve the community together.
Yeah, so, and those men are serving in effect as priests as well as elders as well as prophets. They are the ones God is using, right?
Yeah.
That of course changes as they go into the promised land or even into the wilderness. But what the Watchtower has in effect done is they've chosen Pharaoh and his way of doing things, not the patriarchy.
Top down.
Whereas the patriarchy at least was a check upon any tendency towards dictatorship.
Yeah.
And that's the way it worked in Israel, that Moses wasn't going to impose his dynasty upon Israel, and God never encouraged them to think that way.
So the heads had, there was checks and balances there. The priesthood, was looked to for teaching, and the heads would be teaching their own families. But they were, they had to respond to what they were taught by the priesthood.
So the democratic
and the priest could correct both of them.
Well, that's the way it should have worked, and ideally would have worked. But of course, the checks and balances aspect is that the democratic element is represented by the representatives of families, but it's not by a hands-up vote. It's not by every member of the family, every adult voting that this happens. It's by representation.
But it's family. It's more like family. So it's not a corporation. We're talking about families.
So it's organic.
Yeah.
The way theocracy develops in Israel is organic, not corporate in structure. This is the thing that makes it more like Pharaoh, is the corporate element of it, right? The top-down aspect of it.
Yeah.
And what's our link?
We're linking to a video called Watchtower Myths, God's Organization. It's part 4, and it's organic, if not yet theocratic order. And you should look at the picture in there because it's got the Pharaoh and Moses and
Yeah,
Aaron there, and we'll add the description that's with that.
that's right. The thumbnail has a shot from the Ten Commandments where Moses walks in, but notice who's with him:
Yeah,
the elders of Israel and his brother.
yeah,
That's the beginning of the theocracy. The elders, though, represent the existing theocracy when the story starts out in Egypt, right?
yeah.
I guess you can hear that.
It's raining, pouring.
It's raining
actually.
very hard here. So
Yeah, we might have to go check windows. Yeah.
see you next time.